Hello, welcome, willkommen. Welcome today to our webinar for the Berlin School of Business and Innovation. We've got a very exciting webinar with very interesting guests today. And our topic is the CMO's Toolkit. So what is the CMO's Toolkit? Well, it's everything a CMO in this modern day and age has to carry around with them to be successful in actually achieving the aims and objectives of the organizations that hire them. Now, my name is Joseph O'Brien. I've just done my MBA online, so I'm also here to talk about that. We have some wonderful guests in our studio today. So without any further ado, let's meet our panel. First, we have Mr. Graeme Simpson. He's our CMO, working for Global University Systems, a large education company. Hi, Graeme. How are you?
Very well, Joseph. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here today. And we have Alexander Zeitelhack. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. And he's the academic dean of BSBI. So thank you very much for being here, Alexander.
Great afternoon. Happy to be here.
Okay, and as I say, I'm the moderator for today, and I'm the content development manager for Interactive Pro, and we do online education as well. So we're here to discuss anything you like in the pantheon of marketing, and also the fantastic courses that we offer at the Berlin School of Business and Innovation. We're here to talk about both. So please have your questions ready. This is a Q&A session. So you'll see you'll have a little panel there on the right, a little navigation bar, and you'll have some questions that you'll be able to ask. Please type your questions in there. And about the half an hour mark of this presentation, we can put those questions to Graeme, Alex, and myself. Anything that you want to know, please don't be shy. You'll get out of this session exactly what you put into it. So thank you very much, guys, for attending. I'm looking forward to a great session with you today. So a bit about the CMO's Toolkit. What I did is I asked Graeme and Alex some questions about the Berlin School of Innovation, about what it takes to be a CMO, respectively. And I received some answers for them. We're going to have a conversation around those questions. And we're going to talk about what kind of skills you need to navigate this current landscape in terms of marketing and in terms of professional development. So let's start straight away. Now, Graeme, can you just tell us a bit about your background to start with and what led you to becoming a CMO?
Okay, so it was a long journey in the making of 20 years. I started my career out at a large company in the UK called Dixon Stores Group, a big company, part of the FTSE 100. It was my first journey into the corporate world. And when I first started there, I was working for a telesales team because the internet and the retail side of the business didn't exist. The internet wasn't a thing at that stage. So it was all about, advertising in press and driving people through telephone numbers to actually make sales on mobile phones and PlayStations, etc. About 6 months in, suddenly we started to hear rumors about this whole revolution into the world of online retail. And Dixon's advertised for a small team, an experimental team to move into this retail world. And that was all very exciting. And we were hearing about, these up and coming, small retailers. But it was an interesting time because the retail side really didn't know what was going to hit them in, 5 or 6 years time, this shift from people purchasing in stores to online. And I worked with Dixon's for 8 years on that online side of the business, part of a massive organization, 1,500 people, and I really enjoyed my time there, and it gave me a really good sort of understanding of sort of like corporate mentality and how to work in multiple departments. I left there and I joined a smaller company, much smaller company of only 30 people working in the world of finance, working in stocks and shares. And that gave me a really different balance. I moved from this huge FTSE 100 company into this much smaller startup almost, and it gave me that whole insight into actually owning a P&L and actually understanding what my position did and how it was going to impact in a much smaller business. And I worked there for 8 years, and we took that small stocks and shares website global. We moved it across not only just from the UK, but across into Canada and Brazil and Australia and across Europe. And that really gave me an insight into building a business from something that was very small into something a lot bigger. I stayed there again for 8 years, so I'm very consistent with how long I kind of stay with businesses. I'm not one of these guys that kind of move from company to company. I did move up in my time at each organization with new roles, but I didn't leave that organization. I kind of knew that I had to understand it from everything. To work in marketing, you really need to understand every aspect of that business, and IT, legal, every part of that business and how it works to really sort of become a good CMO, I believe. I joined Global University Systems around 6 years ago. When I joined, it was 5 or 6 large educational brands, and we're now up to 18 brands across multiple locations around the world. And here I am today as a CMO.
Nice. So Alex, would you say that that's something that you would advocate for, people looking to move up, to the top positions in marketing, this kind of blended approach where you work a bit for small business, you've worked for large organizations, you've learned a bit about kind of downstream traditional marketing, and then you kind of learn about, digital marketing. I mean, it's quite hard to have those qualities. I mean, you would have to have quite an extensive career and experience to be able to bring those qualities together, wouldn't you say?
Well, you have to learn from the best and have to gather experiences. So you have to, as an apprentice, be part of a learning curve experience. But sooner or later, you wouldn't get into innovation and can't design the future if you don't overtake your peers and get into your own mode and innovate. So academic training is certainly part of this overtaking yourself almost. So you need the professional experience and innovation at the same time.
Exactly. I mean, we talk a lot about consultancy, and similar things come up. What do you need to be a good consultant when it's not just the hardwired knowledge, it's also experience, contacts, and skills. But let's talk about behavior. I think behavior is very important in leadership. What behavioral attributes, Graeme, do you think make a good CMO? Maybe what behavioral attributes do you have to look at in yourself, whether that's strengths or weaknesses?
I mean, I think you generally have to be a really good all-round manager, a real people person that can work with multiple departments within an organization. To reach the top of a marketing position such as a CMO, you need to obviously work with all areas of the business at all levels. You need leadership, you need the standard kind of like overall management skills that you'd expect. But I think more and more right now, you need a much better understanding of data, statistical stats than what you probably needed, 7 to 10 years ago. 10 years ago, marketing was more about look and feel. We didn't understand to the extent that we do today on that performance based, where we're spending the money, where are we getting the return. So I think general management skills are obviously really important to get to a CMO position, but now more than ever, a better understanding of the data and the numbers is probably one of the biggest things you'd need.
Exactly. And one thing we learn about, especially on MBA courses and stuff, is, we learn about EQ and emotional intelligence as well. It's a big thing. What is it? Self-awareness, social awareness. To Alex, is that something that can be taught as well? Can you kind of learn those behavior attributes in order to to get the buy-in that you need from all the stakeholders at your organization to kind of do those big change initiatives?
Certainly. I mean, I just had lectures at BSBI last week in the field of research, and we went really out in the field to a shopping mall in Berlin, and we're watching consumers and doing statistics. And you have to adapt to the behavior of the consumers in Berlin. There were Chinese, British, Germans, Americans. Everybody behaved totally different. So our students came back with amazing results, and then they had to challenge themselves and their own behavior and their probably prejudices against what they experienced in the field. So this is one part. The other part that is content of the teaching is, of course, theory. Plato, Socrates, ethics, corporate governance, all these kind of things. You have to start somewhere. Although, Socrates says it's a dilemma of the teacher that you do not manipulate your student, but you have to start somewhere giving guidance. So I would call it guidance. And therefore you have to be a good example. Coming to me, being, experience takes its toll, meaning you're getting older, getting experienced is helpful. So it's easy for me to say things, but in academic study, you learn how to take a shortcut into knowing corporate culture, ethics and behavior, not being 60, but being 30.
Exactly. I mean, I learned a great technique the other week that someone told me, and I used the word "but" a lot. When I was saying, yeah, but this, and someone said, I was listening to a great leader, I suppose some would say, the English football manager Gareth Southgate. He used the word equally instead of the word but, and I started using the word equally in my sentences when I'm having conversations in meetings and stuff, and I want to get my point across, but I don't want to be too forcefully. I say the word equally, and it's these kind of behaviors can be learned. You can kind of train yourself to use kind of maybe different language and different words, and that can help you, as I say, get the buy-in from others.
As a working as a consultant, I usually call it, if you have made your own mistakes in life and sell this to others. This is the old version of consulting business, selling mistakes. But what you just mentioned is to have a professional approach. There wouldn't be any coaching possible or any strategic planning if this wouldn't be one of the opportunities.
Now, contentious question, but I always like to see how I can accelerate within my career, as do many of our audience members, I'm sure. Graeme, how can I take your job? Maybe not literally, but how can someone get there or take the kind of job like yours?
Well, the good news, Joseph, is that anyone can take my job. That's for sure. It's definitely a possibility. It takes a lot of hard work, and I think that you need, as I said, a strong foundation in multiple areas of the business. You really need to, put the work in and, do the extra hours, go the extra mile, work hard. And, everyone says, hard work pays off, and it's true, it does. And that's hard work, both in your academic skills, but also obviously in the, the time you put into work and everything else. I remember when I first started out in my career, I'd go in on a Sunday for 2-3 hours every single Sunday to make sure Monday morning at 9 o'clock before that board meeting at Dixon's, my manager had the numbers on their desk ready to go. And it's those kind of extra, hours that you need to put in, and the additional support going above and beyond, which really makes a difference. And I think, asking yourself every morning, what are you trying to achieve? Did you achieve those goals yesterday? Ask you, how much marketing spend did you spend? How many leads did you generate for that spend? Exactly. What's working, what's not? And every day you've got to ask yourself those questions about how can you improve, and how can you improve that marketing ROI? And those are the kind of questions that you need to go through to really excel and to take not my CMO role, but a CMO role in another organization.
Wow. But I like, asking yourself questions every day. It's kind of like a North Star for you. One of my priorities, I can only do so much as a CMO. I've got big bird's eye view priorities. So how many leads did I generate today? How can I shift budget from here to there? What did we do yesterday that we can affect to improve today? What's that going to look like tomorrow? And dealing with it that way and breaking up into chunks. As a consultant, Alex, and marketing management consultant as you are, how can I take your job?
You have to be at the tip of your toes and have to be courageous. Actually, courage is what it takes. There's a saying amongst consultants that goes like this: "Fake it till you make it." So, being courageous and try things out that have never been done before is one of the disciplines. Now, you have to have a good foundation, probably, right? Future is produced out of the past. So analytical skills, being able to see through the surfaces and to have a clear goal. In my case, my credo is customer first. If it's good for the customer, if everything, the whole process everything is geared towards the customer, then an experiment is very often taken by the customer as an opportunity and not as a risk or something that makes them feel uncomfortable.
Nice. And that's something you learn about at master's level as well. You learn about service dominant logic or value dominant logic. How do I view my position or my role in terms of creating value, not just around the product in the exchange that I sell, but in the experience itself. And by creating value, you're in a way honoring your customers in terms of their experience with you, with whatever product it is or service that is that you're selling. Now, obviously, we talked a bit about the digital pioneers coming over. As the internet came out, things turned from what we used to call downstream marketing, print and advertising, to upstream marketing and different techniques. You'll see adverts pop up in the middle of watching YouTube videos or talking on Facebook. It's a different world now. But has the role of CMO then changed over the years in light of all these changing practices, Graeme?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest change that we've all gone through in the recent weeks is GDPR and how we use people's data and how we would use that to market in the
Mm.
past.
Yes.
Digital channels through Facebook, building what they call like-for-like audiences. You used to be able to plug in large groups of personal information of your current student database, and then Facebook would tell you, here's a lovely like-for-like audience that looks exactly the same to your current students. That's all now changed. The way that we deal with consumers' cookies and the way that they get stored and the information there. So I think that's
Right.
probably the biggest impact to digital marketing for the last few years, that's changed the way that we use consumer data and the way that we, optimize our campaigns. And I think that that's going to really change the digital landscape, obviously now, but in the next few years, about how do we market through social media channels, and how do we use consumer data. So that, I think, is probably the most relevant. And then I think the other one is really sort of a CMO role is now a lot more, as I said before, less about the creative side. I mean, yes, you still need to be creative, but it's more to do with performance. You can A/B test landing pages, text ads, messages. You're no longer
Yeah.
taking the gamble that you were sort of 10 years ago, going, right, okay, this is my marketing message and this is what I'm going to go with. You can test audiences, take 5% out of your audience mix and try a message and see how that works against something else. So I think the biggest change from a CMO or all marketing roles that over the last 5 to 10 years is really that data and understanding performance. It's no
Mm.
longer guesswork. What works sometimes in the matter of hours of what's a better campaign than what you thought of previously. So as long as you're on top of your data and you understand it and you monitor it, it's a fun time to be in a CMO or a marketeer.
No, I'd agree as well. A marketing manager, I've been so for a while. And if we use this webinar for an example, like you talked about GDPR, all of our guests today would have opted in. That's something they wouldn't have had to do a few weeks ago. Luckily, that hasn't changed the amount of people coming to our webinars. They still enjoy the subject and they're clicking in. But that means they're agreeing to have their details shared. It's a different world, and they'll be contacted by the organization, and then their data is strictly kept under European regulations. So it's a different world, but the same goes for us. And for this webinar, for instance, is an example of that. We have people coming in who might have seen an advert on Facebook or might have received an email, and we have data that comes in that tells us how effective those mediums of communication with our audience are, as we're looking to create like a valuable experience for people that might be interested in further education or moving up in the world of marketing. So it definitely affects everyone in the marketing role in terms of changing practices. Now, what do you enjoy most about your day-to-day, Graeme?
I think the people that I work with and the teams that I build around me are the most important thing. I think that, as you move up an organization, you take on more responsibility depending on the size. I think that's when you realize that you need to have good quality staff around you. You need the teams that are going to be there to support you and your vision, and the business's vision about where it's going and what the objectives are. And I think that's what you kind of, as you move up the organization, you realize that, your job becomes more about the team and making sure that you've got the right people around you and making sure that they're happy and that they're, they can deliver. And I think that's what I enjoy the most now is building, the team, making sure that the business is growing. And I think that's probably what I enjoy the most about my role right now.
Lovely. Now, the next question I wanted to ask you was about other role models, maybe some typical role models or maybe not so typical, maybe personal to you.
Mm-hmm.
What CMOs do you most admire, and why?
I think it'd be very easy to sit here and start naming large corporations such as, Coca-Cola and Apple,
Yeah, I've seen
and
Steve Jobs in
McDonald's,
my
and
presentation many times.
it's fine. But I think it's usually the marketeers that I admire the most are the ones that are, coming from backgrounds, sometimes startups and the visionary of how they position a new product, and they take in USPs and they're putting it up against something else, and then they take market share. Some of the stuff that, if you think about what Beats the headphones did, they came back into completely smashed it through, taking in influencers through, music and through media. They changed the way that sort of a product could be marketed. And that's obviously a large example. It doesn't have to be a large example. You can then talk about people that move into roles that recreate brands. I think a great example at the moment is the Champion sportswear. You know, Champion as a brand kind of died off, you know, probably 10, maybe 15, maybe even longer ago. I don't know now. But that brand went up against the likes of Nike, and it went up against the likes of Adidas and Under Armour. And it didn't have the marketing budgets, and it didn't have the ability to go after the big sports stars like the David Beckhams and the Ronaldos. They had to go back to influencer marketing, and that's become more prominent in a lot of the urban brands these days. Is they don't build it through, you know, the traditional PPCs. They go out and they build it through the small time influencers. And Champion as a brand did a fantastic job over the last 2 to 3 years to really come back into the marketplace. And they really showed the big boys that you don't need massive budgets to come back in and make a change. You can just do something a bit different and work with influencers on a smaller scale and build your brand that way. So that's who I'm looking at the moment and thinking that's who I admire, and that's why I'm looking at to say, you know, that is the next stage of digital marketing at this moment in time.
Yeah, we all do like a bit of influencing, but yes, it's a niche, and it's something that's very, you know, it's not as easy as it seems just to go on social media and start influencing. It all looks very simple when you're following someone, but it's quite a lot of work that goes into it. Even for me to try to influence people to come and watch webinars, there's a lot of work that goes in there. And some of the best, you know, CEOs and company leaders are actually at the forefront of their own marketing. You know, we can look about, you know, the CEO of GoPro is all over their marketing. Different organizations have their leaders actually in their marketing themselves, and kind of, you know, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. So yeah, it's a very, very, very good option. In terms of your objectives, what do you feel is your most important objective? Because you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, people in the C-suite are target driven and objective driven. So, you know, how will you achieve that?
So the most important objective I've got at the moment within Global University Systems is, you know, we're an umbrella company with multiple brands that fall under Global University Systems. And the complexity of that is we've got multiple teams all working in the same digital channels. They all have to work together, and we need to make sure that, you know, we're sharing information and we're allowing, you know, the brands under the organization to grow and to be competitive. So from my point of view, it's about building those brands into the group, and how do we make sure that everyone's working together, sharing best practice, sharing the channels that work, and really building the group together. And that's probably the biggest sort of objective that I've got to try and achieve in the next 12 months.
Nice. Now, Alex, you're the academic dean of BSBI. So both of you have, you know, positions at, you know, the top of their organizations. One, you know, business, one academic, but, you know, it's also a business. What are your most important objectives as a leader in your organization? How will you look to achieve those objectives?
Well, you know, the education system is at the brink of a disruptive process. We have to modernize and innovate. We did a study with students last year, the future of work 2050. So
wow,
in 2050, we did a future research, and there's the 3 most important drivers are the demographic change, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Now, these 3 main drivers will change our landscape, how we live, how we work, how we migrate, how we spend our business and leisure time. And we have very, very solid data for demographic change, and we know what automation is going to do, but we do not know anything about artificial intelligence. There's lots of speculation, but no real hard data that is beyond 2025. So there is a land of the unknown in front of us is one thing. So we have to prepare in questioning everything we do today. So the old-fashioned old model of government-controlled or government-owned universities is at risk to become a dinosaur. We also found out that for the jobs after 2030, 2035, there's a study from England that says that about 50% of the jobs in 2035 have not been invented yet. So we don't even know the job profiles. We don't know what those people have to know, academic and non-academic. This means that our curricula in the universities have to change, innovate, and become different. This is why we question everything we do today. We have to digitize with blended learning, use new technologies, and have smart learning. We have smart logistics, smart manufacturing, smart anything, smart cars, but there's no such thing as smart learning yet. So that's my objective. We need to have a combination of real brains, data, as Graeme said, and numbers, and at the same time, with the real brains and good technology, we have to reinvent our learning experience.
Exactly. I mean, I think as well, you know, in addition to that, I think creative skills and soft skills are going to start becoming ever more important. You know, when I did my degree in drama and film, at the time, yes, it was a credible degree at a great university, but still, you know, still drama and film. Now it doesn't look as silly when I combine that with an MBA degree, and now I develop content, which is much about producing stuff as well as it is for business purposes. Now, you know, we used to have that old, you know, the old adage, you know, traditional adage, you know, when I grow up, I want my children when they grow up to be doctors or to be lawyers. But now you could say, well, what I want from my child when they grow up is I want them to be able to program lawyer software, because there's already been technology in America where they've had a robot, well, a piece of AI sit there for bail hearings. And the reoffending rate for bail hearings from a piece of AI software was less than if you put those bail hearings in front of actual bona fide lawyers. So I mean, same goes for robot surgeons or for programmers. You have to have someone who understands.
We have the problem that we most likely the expert systems in artificial intelligence will replace lawyers, but what we still need is judges. But judges are made out of lawyers today. So what happens to the profession of a judge when there's no lawyers anymore? And we have to train these people with ethics, philosophy, arts, and other disciplines. So yeah, you're right. That we need to have more creative science, creative stuff into our universities.
So we can call it the Renaissance 2.0. So there we go. And talking about that as a nice segue, I didn't plan that. Graeme, how do you keep yourself current in light of all of this, you know, rapid technological advancement, things happening in the marketing field, lightning pace? How do you keep yourself on top of that?
I think that, you know, we try to ensure that we've got budgets on a monthly basis which are allocated towards test campaigns. I ensure that the teams know that they're to go out there and invest in stuff and try stuff on a small scale first. You know, where I work now, we've got like a 95% of our budget will go into digital channels. And the wonderful thing about that is that everything gets tested and you can prove quite quickly whether or not it's a viable channel. So we try to keep ourselves open. We ensure that we use the latest tools to be able to track competitors and what they're doing. I think that just allowing your marketing teams to have access to test budgets where you can fail and you can test stuff, and it's not everything's got to give you a return straight off the bat. I think that's really important, and to allow people that opportunity to be creative with their budgets and the channels they use. And I think that's how you really keep on top. And just making sure the people around you, yet again, are passionate about marketing, to try and find their next big thing, and to be the first to say, oh, I tried that. You know, the first 6 months of that launching is I think, a very positive thing for the teams and for the organisation.
I remember when Facebook Live came out, and it was like the golden age. It was just so impressed how many people we could reach through Facebook Live, and now.
And that's the thing, is you've got Facebook Live now. Now you've got Instagram Live. You know, is Instagram Live going to take away from YouTube? And I think that, yes, you've got to try this stuff out. And it was interesting watching a lot of the YouTubers to start doing channels all of a sudden on Instagram, and they can't kind of see whether or not they can make more revenue since what they call the ad apocalypse on YouTube, and took all their revenue away. They were desperately looking at Facebook Live and Instagram Live to see if it was a better revenue source. So it's the world's always changed. There's always something new to try and test.
Exactly. We like it when we get people to come and sit and listen to a webinar for half an hour. Not everything could be digested in 3 seconds. That's what's also I find interesting about the digital age. Yes, people's attention spans seem to be small on social media, but there's still a lot of room for people who want to read more, dive deep, and kind of learn a bit more as well. What kind of underlying marketing principles, and I think this is for you, Alex, this question, what underlying marketing principles can help to guide CMOs in their mission?
I still stick with the old mot, the moment of truth of Jan Carlson. You have to. It's an old-fashioned model, but it's if when you confront yourself in a store with a product, a service clerk or whatever, if you check in at an airline counter, or have this disaster that happened in Munich yesterday where they had to lock down a whole terminal for 6 hours. This is the challenge for an airline to then really show what it can do, because the market forces are driven by what happens in reality. So this is actually a challenge, because you can read so many books. Book a week can help you a lot. You have to have experience and get wrinkles all over and grow older, but you have to go out. That's the market challenge I see. The second thing is you need to be aware that we have a necessity to be strategic. There is no such thing as a one best solution in the world. We don't live in a world of one best solution. Otherwise, if one would find it, we would not never able be to challenge him. So in a strategic world, there's always other options, and we have to be strategic. And the third thing is that I think the world is made of dialectic structures. Plato said that if there's one thing, it's certain that the opposite of the thing exists as well. So there's no fast without slow. There's no high without low. There's no concept of ownership without the concept of theft. So in this is something we really need to understand, that we become more humble in the way we look at the market. We cannot dominate it. We cannot rule it. We can be part of it.
Nice. So in terms of marketing, there's no process of selling if there's no process of buying. So if we understand the process of buying, right, then we can better understand the process of selling.
Yeah, very true.
So in terms of our courses, we got a lovely brochure. We want people to after the webinar, they can read that brochure and download it as a handout. You'll see it there in your panel, guys. You can go and download that and have a read after. We do various courses, postgraduate level. But how do our courses, mainly in the business and marketing area, prepare these professionals for this landscape that we've kind of been talking about for the past half an hour? Alex.
Well, there's a multi-pronged approach. For one is an introduction into the culture and society of Germany and Berlin. You have to arrive, so to say. That's one thing, and that means you have to understand the culture, the poetry, the music, the song, the clubs, the local beer, whatever, to be grounded. That's one thing. The next step then will be that while in academic training, you have enough time, because lots of the academic stuff is in blended learning or distant learning. Lots of time to be out there and practically work in Berlin with companies. And we have study projects, because many of our lecturers are coming from companies. So I'm preparing right now for next summer a major project together with Red Bull in Salzburg, so that we get really into a learning and using that marketing and innovation with Red Bull. And we have multiple companies in Germany. I mean, many of the students come to Germany because it's the land of the Siemens and engineering, or the cars of Mercedes and stuff. So if you are interested in these kind of things, and they're all on site, and we have a great network of companies we cooperate with.
Nice, it's absolutely perfect as well. Yeah, because nowadays it really takes more than just a theoretical approach, especially when you're looking at business. You really need to develop yourself as a scholar practitioner. Certainly, you want to be applying the lessons that you learn in class to your work as well. Do a lot of this. We have a few questions coming up in the Q&A that we'll ask about the student body later as well. We'll kind of look at that mix as well and ask you a few questions there. We have some coming. What are the current trends in marketing that CMOs need to be on top of? What kind of trends do you see, Alex, at the moment? that are out there for
Well,
marketing?
actually, Graeme already mentioned a couple of things he's doing. All the data-driven world, and that you can be and make everyone accountable for what you do. On top of that, I see that next to the B2B or B2C market, there's this direct to consumer. To have a D2C, a direct to consumer platform of some kind, because you need to have this login. The GDPR problem can only be solved if you have a relationship with your customer with a login structure. So a direct to customer delivery, logistics process, even product design channel is definitely this kind of a challenge.
Exactly. And for you, Graeme, what's the current hot trend for you right now? If you were saying what's the cool thing to look into at the moment, what do you think CMOs need to be on top of?
I don't think so much myself within the education space, but I think the influencer market, if you're in retail or you've got a product, is the hot thing at the moment. And a few years back, it was about social media and segmenting your audiences and everything else. I think right now it's about building out your brand through the influencers, through YouTube, etc. That is the hot trend at the moment. That's the thing that a lot of retail arms are doing. So not so much for my industry, but certainly out there. I think that's the trend that you need to be on top of. You really need to understand how you can go out there and build a brand, not through superstars, but by small influencers. The makeup artist on YouTube. My daughter follows it all the time. Finds out about new brands just by a girl that's got maybe 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. So it doesn't have to be big scale, but I think that for me is the biggest trend at the moment. It's the biggest shift away from mainstream superstars that you need to have these connections with to go and build brands. It doesn't exist anymore. It'll still be there. It'll always be there, but I think now you can do it at a much smaller scale, and the access is available to everyone.
And it's interesting you're using BMW or whatever Mercedes as examples. Mercedes now, they need to spend millions of euros to make that big splashy movie-like ad with the car going through the valleys. They have to do that, just like traditional marketing. But they also have to figure out who is the coolest Mercedes driver who's influencing out on Instagram, showing people different cars and his driving skills. And they have to find that guy and pay him as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this combination. My best friend, he's the £1 meal chef. If you're in the UK, you might know him. He has 3 cookbooks out all called £1 meals. And he's put his 3rd one out on Amazon this week, and he's built his whole followership, about 150,000 followers, all through Instagram, cooking meals that you can cook for £1 in a minute, and he's done that purely through influencing. But his background was running his own company and being a CEO and running his own footwear company online. So it's kind of what we've been talking about, all the skills that are needed. His first degree was in biochemistry. He did an undergraduate degree. He then went and ran a company, and then he became an influencer. So it's not as easy as what you might see in that 30-second clip that you might have watched while you're eating your sandwich. It's a very different world.
Yeah.
Have you thought of influencing yourself, Alex? You're an influencer yourself. What kind of activities do you do to promote yourself and marketing consultancy, etc.?
I'm still in the old face-to-face environment. I really go out. I go out a lot to startup conventions, to the United States for media conventions. Nice. I go to academic conferences. I have at least about 20-25 these kind of activities a year worldwide. You have to show your face because it's not good enough to know things. You have to know someone who knows. So it's a second level world because the world became too complex. The world is not more complicated, but the variety and the complexity is too high, and you have to have a network. And that's what I do. I go out and meet people.
Exactly. So that's influencing. Is going out there and meeting the people in person, developing your network as well, and then reporting about it, exponentially increasing your sphere of influence. For example, have you got an example? I mean, Graeme, have you got an example of any effective CMO or CEO that has transformed their company's value proposition, or maybe turned a company round from the brink of destruction?
I think there's multiple companies out there that have come back from the brink, or they've been brought very cheaply and they've been, you know, turned around. And I think that's probably where, as I said earlier, the biggest expertise is sometimes to take those brands which are, you know, dying or maybe not successful as they were, and they kind of make a comeback. Elise is a big one at the moment in the sports world that's also making a big comeback. You know, sometimes it's retro, sometimes you just get lucky because these brands kind of all go around in circles and they all come back again. But I think that there's multiple companies where, you know, a new vision or a new insight can sort of come into a business and transform it. And you know, even in the education world, you know, if you get into a business where they maybe don't have that digital insight or the knowledge on digital and how to handle leads and the conversion, you can turn a company around purely because they're not following the new basics and what most new companies are actually doing today.
Exactly. Yeah. Is there brand awareness of what it should be? Are they creating this kind of top of mind scenario where people think, when they think education, they think of that institution, for example? There's so many things we can do. So we've had quite a big conversation about quite a few issues in the world of marketing and how to kind of develop your own skills, how to look at the market, what you're going to do in terms of progressing academically and in your position as well. And we now come to Q&A. We have a few questions, and a couple of them we've had about the course itself. Now, we do have education consultants. The role of our education consultants is to talk to any of you prospective students about picking the right course for you. So I see quite a few questions here about admissions criteria. Do I need an English language test? What are the admissions criteria to start the program? All those questions can be answered by your education consultant. They're there to make sure that you pick the right program. So you might be looking, for example, an MBA on one hand, you might be looking at a Master's of Strategic Marketing. They'll help you understand which course might be better for you. We have some other questions, and hopefully Alex can answer on the academic side. For the course, how many years is the MBA course, and how many years is the MA in Strategic Marketing courses? How long are those courses, Alex?
That's the courses are for 1.5 years, and you have to have a bachelor or similar degree and some work experience, and English language skills. IELTS 6.0 is the average.
Is the standard.
Yeah.
So the courses are taught fully in English for anyone who might have doubted that. Are there another question? I get this in every webinar I do. Are there any exams on the course?
Yeah, certainly. There's lots of assignments and exams. It is a mix between assignments through the distant learning platform Interactive Pro and Uni Nettuno University, who is providing the degrees, is quality managing it through exams.
Okay, we will have our follow-up webinars. So if you tune in and watch your emails as well, we will be having follow-up webinars to the institution that look specifically at the programs and kind of reveal a bit more about what it's like to learn at the institution, what it's like to study at the campus, etc., and they kind of break down those timelines and course structures. So hopefully, Alex, we can have you back and some of your academic team back to discuss that in the future as well. That's perfect. Nice question here. To Graeme, is it possible to have a work-life balance as a CMO?
Not really. I mean, I'm going on holiday on Friday, and I'm sure I'm going to be on emails every day and checking my phone. So I'd love to sit here and say it's all perfect, but no, you do kind of give up. That's the part you do give up, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I was taught a great lesson by a guy. I suppose it's part of giving up is what I've done as well. Is you might torture yourself thinking of work-life balance. So every trade-off in work has to be a trade-off in activity with your family or activity somewhere else. And sometimes you need to give up and look at work-life integration and how you can manage your work and life so it's not a continuous stress, or you're not going through peaks and troughs where Graeme goes on holiday, turns off his emails, and comes back and he's in World War III, trying to deal with everything. So there is such a thing as work-life integration. I think once you've reached the top of your organization, you're pulled from pillar to post. So it's really about how you integrate work into your life rather than separating the two of them out for your supposed sanity, I suppose. On the course, another question: where do the students on the course come from? That's a good question, Alex. What's the kind of
we have
makeup?
Very international intakes: China, Indonesia, Africa, India. So BSBI is a truly international school. We have a very multicultural group of students, as well as very international teachers, lecturers as well. This is why English is the study language. It enables for very many people to come together like that. And we're gonna have a very high emphasis on the possibility to learn German while there and in school as well. So hopefully Germany becomes a language more used within the school as well.
Of course, as well. Coming from Holland, it was very difficult to learn Dutch, and I would have much preferred if I was based in Germany. Yeah. I at least had a basic bit of German to stand by as well. Another question is might be a good question for Alex, maybe for both of you. Can you teach influencing? Is it something you can teach someone to do? Is it a construct?
It is not in marketing. You need some show business on top of this. This is very, since I'm coming out of the radio and television business, I've been consulting radio and TV station for the last 30 years. We have techniques to train moderators, on-air personnel and stuff like this. And there's no such thing as a pure natural. You have to train, you have to exercise. But what you do in our master courses is there is corners where there's, in the leadership, there's rhetoric and there's presentation skills. Now, this is not exactly influencing, but it's what you would need for leadership. And in the master course, you get trained to be a potential leader, a CMO. And therefore, you need to get your own ideas, take the theoretical parts and exercise. Yes, there's time and platforms, and if there's questions, possibilities are there to point out friends and colleagues in the market. Like, last week with the students, we visited Radio Energy in Berlin and spent about an hour and a half at a radio station, being live on air program, being in the studio and stuff like this. And this is just one little piece of stuff we do, because gathering experience from people who are in the business is important.
Hashtag BSBI meets energy.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Photos there, exactly, and creating those moments as well. And like anything, it's everything that might look on the fly. You can prepare and plan, and you can be strategic. If you're going somewhere, if you're meeting someone, you can plan that out. Should I create a story? Should I create a photo? What should I do here as well? So thank you very much for that. I'm just going through the questions, so just bear with me as I look through some of the students' questions as well. How do I develop my marketing skills? What do you think is the most? What's the biggest challenge you faced as a CMO, and how did you overcome that? Mr. Graeme, I think that's a good last question. Actually, what's the biggest challenge you've experienced in your role, and how did you overcome that challenge, Graeme?
I'm trying to think. That's a tough question. I mean, it's over the years you kind of face so much.
What do you think could be the biggest obstacle that you might face currently, and how would you overcome it? Whether it be the market.
I think it's control of budgets, and to ensure that budget's getting monitored and someone's tracking it to make sure it's going to get an ROI. It's okay when you've got a small budget and you're kind of managing it yourself and you've got the oversight. When you've got multiple teams of people all looking after their own budgets and their own vision, and you're putting that trust in someone else, that's probably the hardest thing, is to allow somebody else the power and the ability to actually go in there, actually look after something on their own. And you not necessarily have got that daily insight to ensure that the basics are getting followed, and the only way we overcome it is by obviously having regular communication, regular meetings, standardization of reporting, to make sure that everyone's got that same attention to detail that you'd hope to have yourself. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge, and what I've had to come up against, especially in the current role I'm in.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and it goes down the chain. As a marketing manager, I have my budget. and that goes up and is run up the chain and looked at as well. And so for marketing managers that are moving up the chain, the same as Graeme said as a CMO, know your numbers, know what you're producing. If you want to justify your budget for the next month, for the next quarter, you've spent that money, but what's the ROI? What's the return on your investment? So thank you very much. We'll leave with that. Thank you very much, Mr. Graeme Simpson, Mr. Alex Zeitelhack. Thank you very much for being my guest for today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. For anyone who hasn't taken a handout, now is the time. Please take a handout. It's our wonderful brochure. Please take that and peruse through that. You'll also be in contact with our education consultants, and they'll help you make a choice about what program that you want to do that will help you in your career as well. My name is Joseph O'Brien. I've been the moderator for today. It's been the Berlin School of Business and Innovation webinar. Thank you very much. Make it a productive week, and we'll see you all in class. Thank you very much, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Bye-bye.